Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Spanish United Radio. I'm your host, Enrique Sanchez. Tonight, we have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Hi there, I'm Sean Forbes. I'm the chair of the California National Party, and I'm also running for governor of California.
Welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the time.
My pleasure. I know that we met yesterday during the Field to Burn Zoom conference. I remember hearing about California wanting to exit from the union, but I didn't know that there was an established party. So explain a little bit more about how the party started and what and how the party would go if you were to become elected governor.
Sure. So the party started in 2015 amongst about three individuals, one who is still working with the party, Theo Slater. They founded the party based on the principles of the Scottish National Party, which at that same year was actually doing a referendum for independence, Scotland being independent from the UK.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, so that was their big inspiration. And yeah, it started in 2015. I took over a few years ago, and basically, we've been a movement since that time to spread the idea that we should be independent from the federal government,
Hmm.
that the federal government cannot be reformed, it cannot be changed, it cannot be upgraded. There's no chance for constitutional amendments to make anyone happy. We're always going to be stuck with two senators for the entire nation state of California of 40 million people. So it's time for a change. And so I'm running as governor basically to promote the idea. But in the meantime, obviously, we're still under the United States. I do have other ideas I'd like to get forward about how to help out our nation state and actually make California a better, more affordable place for everyone.
Hmm. Perfect. Yeah, because I know that California by itself is the fifth largest economy in the world, and I know that if California were to succeed from the Union, the United States will collapse at, similar to like the Soviet Union because the other red states are not generating income as much as the red states and the right like to demonize California, which I see constantly. California is a state that is very powerful politically, economically, and but for some reason, the rest of the country, they do not like our way of living. They don't like our values, and there is no point, like you said, there is no point in being part of a country that doesn't like you.
No, I mean, there really is no point. I mean, like, if you remember the fable Gulliver's Travels, where you have the giant
Yes,
tied down by the little people, that
yes, I
those
remember
red
that.
states are the ones that are tying us down. They're exactly the ones who take our resources and curse us. I mean, it's basically like having a few roommates where you pay, 75% of the rent, and they come in, mess up the place, tell you to do new rules, tell you how to live, and they just do not care about any kind of repercussions about what they're doing. They
Right,
don't,
exactly.
there's no future thinking whatsoever. So, I mean, these reactionary red states, they really do take a hell of a lot out of us. I mean, we send, Gavin Newsom's quote, $83 billion to the federal government and don't see it back. And
Right.
that gets wasted into anything from, uh, some kind of like, community center that doesn't get built or, in Mississippi, or it's a Charlie Kirk statue in Arkansas or whatever. It's just used on nonsense. And it's used also as leverage against our people because Californians as a whole did not want to see Roe versus Wade overturned, but the red states and their senators and their president put that through. We're always under attack with illegal ICE gangs. These red states love the idea, even though it's destroying their own economies in the farm sector, and we have to bear and suffer through that. So we've had so many of these outrages being perpetrated by the red states, and I think this is about time to go. It's not representative government anymore, especially when you think about the Senate. Again, only two senators for the nation state of California. We're not, we're overtaxed and underrepresented is basically how I'm putting it, and we're also just under constant, I would just say like, outrageous statements about like California is falling into hell. It is going to be a place where, law is, yeah, law and order is completely out to lunch. I mean, all these kind of like, insinuations, innuendos, attacks, etc., keep coming through from these red states. I'm like, at a certain point, if you were on your own and you actually had your own economy that you could actually, have metaphorically, two legs to stand on, that's one thing to criticize our way of life. But if we're pouring out all this money to these people, What are we doing exactly here? What is the point of helping out people who curse us but want the cash? You know, it's a very poor relationship. It's almost like a battered spouse relationship.
Right. And what's funny is like a lot of those states that like to say that California lives on welfare and unquote. I've seen more welfare everywhere else, and because they don't have an economy. Another thing I wanted to ask in Spanish United, if California were to become its own nation, how would the Hispanic community fit? So as you know, 40%, 5% of the population of the state is Hispanic. And even though we are a large minority, we tend to be underrepresented in government. So how would U.S. government would include Hispanics in the political process once if California becomes its own nation, sovereign nation?
Well, I think actually we can start well before that. I mean, part of my run for governor is that I want to promote the idea of calling a new constitutional convention just for the state of California. The state of
Mhm.
California has had two constitutions in its past. It can be changed, and I think calling forward an assembly of grand juries from every county that is representative of the demographics of those counties, they can come together and actually bring forward an actual better system where Hispanic communities can be represented in many different regards, can actually have their voice heard across the political spectrum, perhaps not the Republican side of things, obviously, but again, a way bigger spectrum of political thought beyond just the Democratic political party machine. And I think that we can at least start here with having a better system. Now, of course, that doesn't eliminate, the issues that we're getting from the federal government. It doesn't eliminate ICE all the way. But at least we can start having more of these voices, especially since, again, our system of government in California is of the 19th century. I mean, we have a legislature that's smaller than Iowa's. We have 40 million people here. I mean, that is the size of Canada,
Right.
population-wise. And we just have it all centered in Sacramento. In Sacramento, cannot come up with these one-size-fit-all ideas. What Sacramento needs to do is spread out these, the powers of government, kind of like a federalized states within the state of California. Make sure the regions, localities have much more control because the people who actually live there know best. Now, granted, you have to make sure there's certain floors that can't fall through. You can't have a California, Alabama. You can't have an environmental wasteland or anything like that. But I think that the local populations know what's best for them, not just everything coming out of Sacramento and not just everything coming out of like whatever Democrat hack politician thought up the last thing.
Right. Yeah, because I represent a huge demographic. I am a community leader, civil rights leader for the Hispanic community, and I've had many town hall meetings, city hall meetings, where I've even met with the district attorney Nathan Hodgman discussing the issue of Hispanic exclusion. And even though Hispanics, contribute a lot in taxes, we don't see the benefits. So I believe that if there could be more of an equal um, side where Hispanics could not only contribute economically but politically, I think it would help the state to remain not only stable but also prosperous.
I think so too, because a lot of people are having the door shut in front of them, and they need to be able to actually vocalize their concerns and actually have some power over their communities. Right now, we just don't have that with California. California, again, is based on, a 19th century idea of like what a state should be, which is basically just an outpost to get gold and, to promote agriculture. We need to have something where we have again a federalized system within the state where again localities have control, people have more say. Again, the monopoly of money that flows into California to basically dictate our politics that needs to be stopped up. We need to have public financing, and we just need to have people able to partake in politics without having a millionaire salary to begin with. I mean, we
Mhm.
really have like so many people that have a lot to say, important ideas, but they're locked out because they just don't have the money and time. And so we should have much more of an expansion of any which way to get into politics. I mean, I think local assemblies, regional governors, again, I think people would be more active. I mean, right now we have what 16 million people in Los Angeles, which is Los Angeles County, excuse me, which is bigger than most states, and we only
Mhm.
have five supervisors to be the branch of government for it. I mean,
Mhm.
that's incredibly low. I mean, you need to have a ton of money, name recognition, and time to have any kind of say over the county. It's just five people ruling over 16 million. So we have to really have a revolutionary change in California politics to begin with, even before any idea about independence. We need to make sure we start that kind of ball rolling.
Absolutely. And I was listening also yesterday, you were talking about universal healthcare. As you know, universal healthcare is a big topic because, as you know, many people are not getting adequate healthcare like they should, and because of the pharmaceutical companies and private interest, they are preventing a universal single payer tax system, I mean, a payer system to be implemented. So, how would California be able to implement that? And I know that California has the resources to do so, but how would they implement it?
Well, I would say again, before even independence, what we have to do is to make sure that we actually get the $83 billion we send out to these red states and to the federal government back. There is mechanisms talked about. Again, there's a recourse act that's being kicked around in the state of New York's legislature. But Governor Maine has also talked about this as well. So we need to come up with the mechanism to take the money back because it's not being used properly. And we already have an $18 billion deficit, which can be attributed to mismanagement or just again the growing pains of a large state. Again, that is 40 million people. But I would say that once we got the $83 billion back, or at least a portion of it, or a good portion of it, we can afford that healthcare. We can make that happen. It's just right now, Newsom threatened to take back the 83 billion, but never really followed through. He just made one tweet and that was about it, which I think speaks volumes about his leadership. We can actually make sure we can do this. I mean, again, the Soviet Union fell apart, it dissolved. Somehow, a Ukraine, with the KGB and the military-industrial complex breathing down their neck, managed to withhold funds from the central government. I think we can actually figure out something too. And just like the implosion of the Soviet Union, we could do this without violence or any kind of like, crazy, thoughts of civil war, like, tales of like ancient history.
Hmm. Yeah, because again, there is a lot of wasteful spending in the state, and that could be used to fund programs, create economic development, and most importantly, it would serve as a model, particularly for other states that want to succeed from the union, that they don't see the federal government doing anything for them. So I think this could serve as a model for other states to follow.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there already is like, the talk of soft secession, which is, again, to me is a little bit of an odd phrasing because if you're not paying money to the central government, if you're trying to pull away from the central government, but you're keeping the flag and I guess the president, then you didn't really secede. I mean, it's a little bit strange to me, but I think that again, more states are kind of following that direction, and they haven't gone to the point of view of the CMP of like, we have to get over that nostalgic hump. We need to realize that the central government's not doing anything for us, it's not helping us. And I think that, California coming out of the gate and actually being the one that figured out the way to actually leave peacefully from the United States federal government. When that happens, it will be, almost again, lack of a better term, a domino effect. I believe the West Coast, Oregon, and Washington would follow. I think New England would actually do the same thing too. And then even if they waited just, a few years, they would realize that, wow, we can actually flourish and actually grow and actually have a better society if we didn't have, Republican control of so many states, if we didn't have, again, the nonsense incompetence of the National Democratic Party, if we didn't have the ugliness of MAGA, we could actually be something here. We could be so much better than what we are right now. Because right now, what we are is a tired, exhausted state that pours out a ton of money to people who are just hateful, incompetent, corrupt, all the kind of, pejoratives I could use. They are
Mhm.
that. We're at the bottom of the barrel right now. We need to, the Titanic's sinking and we need to get in the lifeboat, and the lifeboat is California.
Absolutely. And would how would you describe the ideology of the California National Party? Are they a left leaning party? Are they right leaning centrist? Like, what position do they stand in?
I know I again, because we have such a spectrum of political opinion that's basically goes across anything from like a centrism to kind of a leftism. Again, I hesitate to give us a label because I think that so many CMP members have their own thought process besides just being anti-MAGA, anti-corruption, status quo. So it's kind of hard to gauge the party per se, but I would say that the party itself is for the California community. It is for what betters the community. Now, again, this almost gets into like a sort of like a post-leftism, or again, maybe the another way to put it is the California road to socialism. We just need to always look at ideas pragmatically, how we actually can solve an issue. Like again, when it comes to housing, healthcare, what is the most rational way to do that? And that's basically our kind of North Star. That's the way we actually make things happen. It's like, okay, we got XYZ problem. How do we actually solve that in a humane way? And
Hmm.
so I would guess that would be the best way to put it. I mean, again, would you say it's left? Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, I would say that we're one of the most radical parties out there because we do want to break away from the federal government. But at the same time, too, again, we're a party that, really tries to embrace the 21st century and not get logged into or locked into these paradigms of past thought that, are interesting and sometimes good, but there's sometimes some of these ideas are outdated or again could be just upgraded based on the fact that we live in 2025, not in 1965.
Hmm. Exactly. No, the reason why I asked, because I know that there are other little parties, outside the two main ones. You have the Green Party, you have the Libertarian Party.
Mhm.
But at least, those other parties, they have like like a view, like the Green Party, even though they could be considered progressive, but they're more environmental, while
Mhm.
the Libertarian Party is completely last for us economics.
Mhm.
So that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest too, I mean, like we have strains of thought that come from them. I mean, we don't, say there's a monopoly of wisdom coming from our party. We do take all of the spectrum of thought, besides obviously the right and MAGA. But from the Greens, again, the people who are in the area, the locales, they have the best idea how the environment should work. Also, at the same time, too, we need to have floors so that, you can't just, desolate an area because some faction of, oligarchs took over a spot and decided just, to do everything they could to, reap the benefits of the land and destroy anyone who's living nearby or any kind of like wildlife or anything like that. So again, we're strongly environmental. I mean, and also again, we're besides of course, being for independence from the federal government, just as a quick note, Trump is putting back in, coastal oil drilling, right?
Yes,
And
that I
so
know.
they're one of the biggest things we're against because first off, this is our area. We live here, we surf here, we fish here. We didn't have a say in that. And again, it's potentially catastrophic for the environment. So again, that kind of is our, how would I say, like the way we view things. Again, we should be able the ones that actually call the shots. Can we actually figure out something as a compromise? Maybe, but again, we weren't invited to the table. We weren't talked to. So we want to start with that. And also again, we do have a climate crisis. We do have so many things happening. We need to make sure that we actually do the best for everyone. So it's a mixture of like making sure that the local narrative or the local community is actually, can partake in the discussion while at the same time too, making sure that, we're not going to have some kind of get rich quick kind of idea of like, just blowing up the environment because the community thinks that they're going to make thousands of dollars and, God knows what. So that's
Hmm.
something that we take from the Greens. I mean, they're very much into local control in the environment. At the same time, too, though, with the libertarians, I mean, we strongly believe that the war on drugs was a failure. I mean, there's nothing that's come out that is good. I mean, and again, all we are getting is prohibition style cartels and gangs, massive violence, and
Hmm.
people left untreated. And it's an absolute failure. So again, like the libertarians, we would turn off the war on drugs and figure out a new system. So again, we do have these little strains of thought. We're not, again, I think the one thing we have besides, our belief in independence is that we're not dogmatic whatsoever. We
Hmm.
do try to look around, but also at the same time too, I don't want to present that as like this is some kind of centrism, like oh, we're trying to compromise constantly between two sides. No, we just want to make sure we have a humane, progressive agenda that we're following and using the tools and the ideas of today, not something that came, decades before.
Right. And as far as foreign policy, like if the state becomes independent, how will the California National Party handle foreign policy? You know, what would be an example or hypothetical scenario of a foreign policy for California as a republic?
Well, the best way I would put it is that we would be a Switzerland on the Pacific, not some kind of refuge for obviously people doing illegal activities by banking, but again, we want to be something where we're neutral. We're able to provide resources to developing countries, not with any kind of strings attached, not with some kind of IMF agenda. I think that would be the major part of our foreign policy. And then when it comes to serious acts of genocide, like what's happening in Gaza,
Hmm.
or an invasion that was unprovoked, like Russia versus Ukraine,
Hmm.
we would actually step in a little bit more. But, if we're going to be a republic on the Pacific, we're not trying to build an empire around the world. We have no desire for California military bases in Thailand or like Uzbekistan or something like that. We don't have any desire for any of that. But
Right.
there is a moral question that has to come in when you have an outside aggressor who's breaking borders, or again, like a genocide. But the nonsense of the 21st century, the early 21st century and the 20th century, when it comes to American foreign policy, that would be gone with the wind. It's a sign of a more barbaric time.
Yeah, because I know that as with any nation that succeeds or is expelled, like in the case of Singapore, that was expelled from Malaysia in 1965, they have to start from scratch. You know, they have to build an army, they have to build an economy, an infrastructure, a foreign policy. So do you think California would have like more of a keep away relationship with the United States, or do you think it will be kind of cordial or what?
I think it's just cordial. It's just, I would say that, the Steele Marjorie Taylor Greene's line, it would be a national divorce, but it'd be one that's a friendly divorce. There's no reason why we have to have animosity. We could say that the federal government is doing stupid things and evil things, and we should stand there with honest appraisal of every situation. But at the same time, too, I don't see why there should be like a hard border or anything like that, or an ability to travel between states in California. I don't believe any of that is necessary. I do think that again, trade can continue, but at the same time, too, California's values and its people have to be respected with any discussion because we're no longer in one household. We have, two separate residences, and when you come over to our side, you have to respect this. And same thing too, we'll do the same in return. So I think that there would be no issue of a changeover. I mean, again, if Baltic republics under the KGB and the military industrial complex of the Soviet Union could actually figure out how to have independence, I'm pretty sure the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world can actually do the same thing too. People also like to bring up like, oh, what are you going to do for military? Well, if we took the defense spending recently and we, kind of divide up by like, okay, the population of California uh, vis-a-vis the United States, we have like about what, 12 to 14% of the population. Roughly, we would be, if we wanted to actually have the same amount of military spending as the United States does right now, we'd be spending $98 billion dollars in the California defense budget, right? But that's a ridiculous amount. That's actually way out of whack. Even Russia in wartime right now is not reaching that number.
Mhm.
So again, if we're not in any kind of aggressive global expansionistic mood, I think we could drop that down to, the levels of Canada, etc., where we have a proper military, proper defense network, etc. But we don't need to spend $98 billion dollars to make that happen. We can spend, what their equivalent is for like 25, 30. I mean, that's already a huge amount of savings that we could actually use literally for anything else if we
Well,
actually get
yeah,
that
yeah,
system.
yeah, and I think that's another factor with the United States in general that they spend way too much on the military budget, more than they're supposed to. And again, what are they doing with that money? What does the military do with that money? That's what I wonder.
I think it's just it's will be revealed as one of the longest running scams on the American people. It is a complete grift. I think that the military budget is throwing billions of dollars, and you have contractors and companies and Raytheon and whoever. Yeah, they make some wonder weapons. They make some things that make the rednecks cheer, but really, they're spending on like oh, this toilet costs $15,000 to replace. Oh, there's a plumbing on the aircraft carrier. I guess it's about $100,000 to replace. And none of these factors are actually checked up on. I mean, the Defense Department has never done an audit properly, right? So we have no idea. It's just, I think, one long grift. And also, again, too, with the state of modern warfare, with like, drone warfare, hypersonic missiles, etc., some of our stuff is actually, I think, completely outdated. Like, for example, the aircraft carriers. Yes, I mean, like if you have to project force, you need to have a boat to transfer the planes on, but those things are incredibly vulnerable to hypersonic missiles. I mean, they're incredibly vulnerable to like drone attacks. It's just that they haven't been attacked right now for such a long time. But long story short, you spend billions of dollars for this aircraft carrier. Well, what does it actually do in the end if we actually get into a real war with a real opponent, as opposed to bombing some Middle Eastern country?
Right, exactly. And another question, as far as education is concerned, how would California expand in education?
Well, California, again, if we had the $83 billion back, we had actually the resources back in our pocket. And again, this could be achieved, before independence. So we have this kind of money. The first thing is that we need to make sure that the college system is free.
Hmm.
Free in the sense that it's paid for the taxpayer. I know, again, people like to quibble. It's like, well, it's not really free. Yeah, I know. The taxpayer will be putting that money towards the students. I think that eliminating the entirety of student loans and all that nonsense. I think that if you could pass the entrance exams, you got the grades, you should be able to go to the school. Money should not be the issue at that point. I think that's the biggest expansion we could do for our educational system, which again, the K through 12 system is a bit of a mess in California. That is true, but the upper, the university, the colleges are extremely good. Again, nationally, worldwide, etc. So I think that we need to prepare those, expand them, have more students come through who have again the ability, the hard work, the dedication. They can actually get through the exams, they actually get into the school. They shouldn't have to worry about money at this point. I think the student loan should be forgiven as much as possible. If we could do that actually even before independence. And then to the K through 12 system, I think that, we need to start looking across the world. I mean, like you look at Finland, you look at, European countries, they do have better systems. So why? We should actually have a commission to figure out what they are doing and copy that. Because I think
Right.
right now we're just kind of stuck in like, oh, well, it's kind of crappy. Well, that's what, Texas is doing. Oh, they put 10 commandments in the classroom. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes, and that's the interesting thing that in states that are red, education is not really emphasized. But you do have a point that California, nationally and globally, we rank off the top universities. Like we have Berkeley, University of Berkeley, we have UCLA, we have University of Southern California. Hey, that's great, but again, the institutions of regular education, the public school system needs to be expanded. And you actually touched up on an interesting point because when I went to Finland a couple of years ago, Finland is ranked one of the happiest countries in the world, primarily because they invest a lot in education and they also make sure that the people are paid well. So that way they can feel that they have loyalty to the system. And that's the problem here, that many teachers are overworked and underpaid, underappreciated. And then many of them feel that there is really no point in educating the students because it doesn't pay off. So I think that mindset also needs to change.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of silly. People talk of education, education, and how does teacher helped out so many people, but apparently we just don't invest in it. I mean, like again, we have the fourth largest economy here in the state of California. You mean we couldn't figure out a way to actually make sure that I'm not saying teachers right now are not the best and brightest. They definitely, there's a lot of good ones. There's a lot not so good ones, but again, overall, all of them are being underpaid. Why are we not developing a system that, by the end of their tenure, they would actually be retired millionaires and again actually have money to work towards? I mean, again, this is not rocket science. I mean, if you really want to have a better system, you want to retain the really good ones, who may actually leave because they literally can't afford to live on that salary. Why don't you retain those people? Why don't you have a system to kind of see, we don't kind of weed out the bad ones and really kind of create this like new class where like a teacher is not just lauded by, everyone saying, oh, it's so great to be a teacher, you're doing a good job for the students, but actually rewarded by society. I mean, right now we're rewarding bad actors in our society. We're rewarding ICE agents with $50,000 bonuses. We're rewarding Musk and, trillionaire class. I mean, what are we doing? We need to reevaluate how we do things. And I think that
Absolutely.
the first thing has to be teachers and professors because again, I've been around professors and teachers my entire life in multiple different ways, not just schooling, but outside. And I see their struggles and I see again, like, the hardship they go through, all the grading, again, just trying to be a kind of like almost a psychological counselor to students at times. I mean, doing all these things above and beyond, and they're no way rewarded. And it's a very poor sign of how American society is. And I hope that in a new California society, we kind of have better values than what the old system had.
Right, right. Well, we come to the end of our time. I wanted to tell you, Sean, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you here. And for all of our guests on Spanish United Radio, you could reach us on all social media platforms. We are on Spanish United Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, now known as X. We are on YouTube. We are a nonprofit organization, 501. Anyone that wants to make a donation, anything that you give is going to be used to help someone in the community that needs it. And as soon as I'm finished, I will send you the link, and you could share it with all of your colleagues. And again, Sean, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. And everyone's interested, again, you can check us out at votecmp.org. That's votecmp.org.
Thank you so much. Have yourself a wonderful evening.
You too.